Hello, Chris Williams here from Alright Games, and today is a super exciting day because today I received Obelus in the mail. This is a game that I designed and made with Phase Shift Games. So you may be asking yourself, oh, it's published by Phase Shift Games. Why are you saying you're Chris Williams with Alright Games? So if you don't follow me too often or don't know, so Alright Games is is my own company. I do like self-publishing games through there, and I usually sell them on like the Game Crafter. And that's usually just with kind of like smaller scale ones. So then when I want to pitch it to publishers to try to enhance the game and bring it to wider audiences, that's when I start reaching out to other publishers. And so this game originally started as Dark Spires, and so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video, was the difference between Dark Spires and Obelus, and the journey of how it came from Dark Spires under Alright Games to Obelus by Phase Shift Games. But before we get into that, let's take a peek inside Obelus, because that's the super exciting thing of the day, is that this just came in the mail. So we can check it out here. Here's the box. It's very small. If you compare it to the original Dark Spires mint tin, it's not a huge difference in size. So it's a tiny little game, but it's really packed in there with some awesome strategy and everything that you can do in this game. So if you're not aware, Obelus is a two-player abstract strategy game where you have a ring of cards and you have these little obelisk dice that are moving around them. And you're trying to block your opponent, prevent him from moving. If you can't move or bring in a new die, then you lose. So there's a lot of strategy behind it. It's very easy to figure out and play and stuff, but it's a really nice depth of strategy. I love it. This is my favorite of all my designs. So, all right, let's get into it. So, open up the box here. We can see here's the little rule book. We'll take a look at that. It's a very short, easy game to learn. This was very exciting for me to be able to see on my name on the box and my name on the rulebook and everything. You can see it there and everything. So this is my first non-self-published game to come out, and so it's a big day for me. All right, so let's dive more into the box here. So in the box, you can already see the cards are nice and shiny there. Those are our foil or holographic cards. And then at the top here are the Rift tokens. There's 8 of them there. Let's take a look at the cards first, because they are really awesome. So there's 8 of them, and it might be hard to see. It looks way more, rainbowy on the camera than it kind of does in real life, and it kind of depends on the, on the lighting and everything like that. But what I didn't expect until I got this copy in my hands today was that it almost gives it like a sort of a 3D effect because of the way the background is illustrated there, kind of tied with that holographic look there. Gives this really cool, sort of almost like a 3D effect. So these cards get laid out in a circle on the table. I can show you on the back of the box here without spilling everything. You can see there's a circle. Oh, I dropped a few things. There's a circle that you put all the things on, so the cards lay out on the circle on the table. So it has a really cool table presence because of that. All right, next let's look at the Rift tokens. I'll just pull one out here. So there's 8 of them here. I don't know, it's gonna be hard to see on the camera. Let me see if I can find one that's a little more prominent. Yeah, there you go. Maybe you can see it on the camera there. So inside the Rift token is like a red swirl. Yeah, I don't know that you're gonna be able to see it on there, but holding up to the light or something, or holding it in your hands and stuff, it's really cool. It's pretty subtle, but it looks really cool. And so the reason for the Rift token is they get put onto these cards, and that signifies that you can no longer summon a die there. You can no longer summon an obelisk there, and so that's prevents it. It kind of slowly closes the map in there. So those are the Rift tokens. So now we'll look at the obelisk dice. There's 8 of these, 4 in black, 4 white, and they look amazing. They just look so cool. And you'll notice that there's a different color for the 4. Pull it back so it focuses a little bit there. Different color for the 4. 4s can only banish other 4s, so they're safe. So as you're playing, you're moving these around and landing on top of each other in order to banish them, and you can bring them back later with reforming, which is what causes the rifts and kind of closes everything in. But so you're moving around and banishing these dice by moving on top of them, and the 4s can only be banished by another 4. And so, but you can only have one out at a time too. So they're strong. They're also super easy to block because they have the largest movement path of all the other dice. So like a 1, you can't really block it because it can only move 1 space. There's nothing, you can't really go to the side of it because normally you can't move through other opponent's dice. But so 4 is going to be super easy to block because it moves the farthest space. So there's lots of spaces in between to jump in front of it. But it kind of balances that out by not being able to be destroyed by anything except for another 4. So yeah, these turned out really cool. It's hard to sort of see here, especially the black one on the camera because I'm just using my phone camera here. But they've got these really cool sort of marbly looking effects on them. I love them. They turned out so good. All right, so that is all the components there. I want to show you, I want to compare it to the original Dark Spires one. So again, the box difference here, this is Obelus, this is Dark Spires. The reason it was called Dark Spires before was because so these are 4-sided dice. So before when I just used standard D4s, so they were kind of like spires sitting on, on the table and everything all around, which looked really cool. But because they're D4s, they're kind of, they're finicky. They're not the best to move around. They've got lots of numbers on them, so it's kind of hard to, at a glance tell what it is. So the upgrade to these little obelisk shaped D4s, so much better. So much better. I love it. They just look so great. It's really cool. But yeah, so that's the dice upgrade there. We can see there was also in Dark Spires, there were these what they were called portal tokens at the time. These have kind of been replaced with the Rift tokens, and their effects have changed too. I'll get into that here in just a moment. But they're they were these little like I've always called them dragon beads. I don't know if that's what they're actually called, but that's just what I grew up calling them. They're just these little glass gem looking things were in the old Dark Spires version. And the cards, so the cards I had just as these little mint tin cards from the Game Crafter. They were very minimalistic and everything too, as compared to the new cards here. I'm still nostalgic, so I do really enjoy my old designs here. So I had done all the graphic design and the art for this original Dark Spires version. It took me a while to land on it, and so I had a lot of fun making it, so I'm pretty biased with it. But this one is amazing. Like this turned out so cool with the box art. We went through a lot of discussions of trying to figure out what to put on these cards because they're really just kind of making up the map. I was wondering, should we put the art on there, but that's too busy. And so I feel like we came to such an awesome little middle ground there where these don't like jump out at you and distract you during the game, but they give it such a really beautiful table presence. And I suppose I didn't show the back there. It's just the plain back there has the name on there, Obelus. And actually, let's touch on that too. So when we switched from the name Dark Spires to Obelus, we knew we had to change Dark Spires because they weren't spires anymore. They were more of obelisks. And so as we're thinking about that, we're like, what else can we do that has this cool, dark, mysterious feeling to it? And we found a friend of mine that playtests found that he suggested the word Obelus because I guess there's something about how the word obelisk derives from obelus, and obelus is also like something with the English language, some sort of almost asterisk kind of thing. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it sounded cool and mysterious, and so that's what we went with. I had a lot of fun kind of brainstorming what to do there. So so those are the component differences there. Now I want to talk about, I suppose, what the gameplay differences are. You can already see that there's these art differences and stuff. The look and components, everything is different. But so the gameplay difference, when I first released Dark Spires here, as a 2-player abstract strategy game, I tried to keep it as simple as possible. And there were times where we ran into some problems of people getting into a sort of a loop that would sort of lead, I don't want to call it a stalemate, but it forced players to really not necessarily work with each other, but get into a way to break that loop so that one player could get ahead. And that was a challenge for a lot of players. Part of me still enjoys that part of the game. I really liked the old version of Dark Spires where you would get into these loops and now the game all of a sudden became, how do I get out of this loop while keeping myself ahead? But it was it wasn't needed. It was such a small part of the game and was frustrating for most people. So I'm glad we changed it. And so I can definitely say that these rules changes that I'll go over here all helped fix that. They got rid of the loops. They got rid of the stalemates. They sped up the game incredibly fast. I mean, it's such a quick game. You can easily play it in 10 minutes, even that. When before you could have 10-minute games in the old Dark Spires game, but you could also have 45-minute games. And so again, that was frustrating. So I'm glad we implemented some changes. And so I worked really closely with Jason from Phase Shift Games to make these changes. Give him a ton of credit on helping me, brainstorm through these and work through them and really develop this game. Because again, that's what I like to do. I have Alright Games, my company, to self-publish things, but then I want to work with a publisher to help really bring those games out and really make them better and upgrade the components and art, but also upgrade the rules. So the rules changes that we did, that first one I kind of mentioned, we changed we had the portal tokens and we changed them to rift tokens. So before, the portal tokens were pretty much a marker to show where your last summon was. So you would bring in let me see here, you bring in a Spire, you put it on a card, and then you would move your portal token to that card. And the portal token would stay on that card until you summoned a new Spire somewhere. And this just prevented summoning. You can't summon on a spot that had a token on it. And so the reason I had that in there originally was, again, helping with those loops, because without it, you would get into like an immediate loop. So that portal token made it just so you couldn't summon on the last place someone summoned. So that's really in depth there maybe, but yeah. So that was the thing. So the portal tokens were cool, but they didn't solve the problem enough. So we changed it to these rift tokens that make it so that every time you reform a die, so that's where you bring back a banished one that was out of the game, you can bring it back so that you can use it again later. That creates a rift that now goes on one of these cards. And now that rift is going to prevent summoning there, just like the portal token did. But this stays there forever, and there's 8 of them because there's 8 cards. So as you get further and further into the game, and players are playing aggressively, they start attacking each other more often, and then they have to kind of scramble to get their dice back so that they can continue playing and have enough tokens to actually do things. When you do that, you start creating all these rifts, and it closes in the board, and now all of a sudden you have less and less spaces that you can summon to, and your opponent can use that against you. But you can use it against them too. So that's the other thing. The portal tokens, there was one for each player, and you couldn't summon them either, regardless of the player, but you could kind of control it a little bit based on where you wanted to summon. They're red. They're for both players. It doesn't matter who did the reforming or whatever. This token's going to go there, and it's going to mess you up. So that was really cool. The next one we did is we made the 4s can only be banished by 4s. So I talked about that a little bit. 4s can only ever be banished by other 4s. That wasn't in the game before. So when they were just these little spires, 4s were just like any other die. The bad part about that was 4s were almost useless. They were so situational. So players hardly ever used them. They were very easy to block, like I talked about, because they move that big distance all the way around the board. The only unique thing about them was because there's 8 cards. If you have a 4 here, it's the only number that can target the same card on the opposite end, regardless. So you can move clockwise or counterclockwise when you play this game. And so normally if I move, I have 8 cards. If I move 2 spaces, I'm only, kind of coming over here. But on a 4, I'm moving all the way around to the exact opposite end. Regardless of whether I go clockwise or counterclockwise, I'm targeting that same card with a 4. That's not true with any of the other numbers, the 1, 2, 3, or 4. Or sorry, 1, 2, or 3. 4 is the only one that targets that same card on the other end. And that was a cool mechanic, but it wasn't enough to make the 4 good. So no one really used it very often. So we came up with this idea to make it so that 4s can only be, 4s can only be banished by another 4. So that made it way stronger. But then we had to tweak that a little bit, because then it's like, okay, why not just put out a bunch of 4s then? So we added in that 4s can, each player can only have 1 4 out at a time. Not a big deal. I had another rule in there before that made it so that no player could ever have more than 2 of the same number out at a time. I called it the rule of pairs. And that helped a lot with 1s. 1s were really strong before because they couldn't be blocked. And so being able to add the 4s helped a couple ways to make it so that I didn't have to have that rule of pairs, because the rule of pairs was easy to forget. And so getting rid of that was a pretty high priority for us. So adding the 4, now there was only a rule kind of like that for the 4 where you can only have 1 out, and it has that different color, so it's easy to remember because of that. But what it did is it made 1s not as powerful, because normally a 1 can just move 1 space, so you can't block it. It can hit almost anything, but now you can throw a 4 next to a 1, and now that 1 is trapped going one way, because it can't go one way and hit the 4 because it can't banish a 4. So you know that 1 is only going to be able to go the opposite, the other direction. And so that really knocked 1s down a peg and made them a lot weaker. Well, let's say a lot less overpowered, because before they were pretty OP. So that was, because we were able to do that, we no longer needed the rule of pairs to help keep 1s in check. Because before the rule of pairs, if you had like 3 1s next to each other, that was a really strong position on the board. So that was really cool for that. It was killed one of those things where it's like killed a lot of issues with just one simple change. Making a 4 only be banishable by another 4 made the 4s stronger, made the 1s weaker, and also made it so we could get rid of that rule of pairs. Let's see, we also, I think that was really the main things. We changed the portals to rifts. We made it so the 4s can only be banished by other 4s. We removed the rule of pairs. Oh, and then, so this was not necessarily rules change, but a rules addition. We added what's called chaos mode. So now in Obelus, we have pure mode and chaos mode. And pure mode is just the base game. It's a purely abstract strategy game. There's no luck. Everything is all open information. You have the only, like, I guess not even luck is on what your opponent's going to do. You don't know what they're going to do on their turn. They've got lots of options, and so you strategize around that. In chaos mode, you start off the game by rolling all of the dice and putting them in the middle. And so then when you bring a die into the game, it has to stay as the value that you rolled it at. Throughout the game, as you're moving it around, you can kind of choose stuff, but then anytime you ever bring a die back, so when you reform it, you have to roll it. So that just adds a lot of randomness. You'll always re-roll 4s, because we don't want to force players to have to place a 4, and that kind of breaks that whole only being able to have one of them out at a time. So you always re-roll 4s. But otherwise, anytime you bring a die into the middle, back from the outside to the middle, or during setup, you're going to roll them. And it added this really interesting thing. I was pretty hesitant with it. I'll be honest. I was very hesitant at the beginning, because I'm like, no, this is an abstract strategy game. You can't have any dice rolling in here. But it grew on me. It really did. Because being able to see what dice your opponent has and what dice you have really forces you to think outside of your normal play style. If I roll a ton of 1s, like, that could seem really good, but now where I place my 1s is going to be incredibly important, because now I have a very small section of that board that I can play with. Well, my opponent, if they have high numbers, they might be easier to block, and I can put my 1s right next to them and not have to worry, but they've got this huge range of the board that they can work around, and that just gives them a ton of options, especially if they start bringing out 4s. That'll wreck the 1s real quick. But yeah, so I probably went on longer than I needed to. It looks like this video is getting close to 20 minutes long. Sorry, this is my favorite of all my designs. I just wanted to gush a little bit. I got Obelus in the mail today, and I was so pumped. I made this game, I think it was probably around 4 years ago is when I started making it, when I started making Dark Spires, and I released it on the Game Crafter. I had done a crowd sale at the time, and I think I sold maybe 50 or so copies, something like that. Not a huge amount, but it was such a big burst of motivation for me in it, because this has kind of been my biggest game that I've made so far. And then I got it picked up with Phase Shift Games, and they have been amazing to work with. Any designers out there, if you are looking for a publisher, Phase Shift Games, they're awesome. I couldn't recommend them more. So I'll cut it off here. Check out Obelus on Phase Shift Games. I'll leave a link to it in the description here, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks.